Jimmy and JoAnne, welcome back. Happy New Year. It's been a really hectic start to 2020. A lot of breaking news from the Middle East. Wanted to bring you guys on to share with us what information you've got. How are you both?
Great.
Doing great.
Thank you, Jason. We, as you said, we have had a very, very distressful days. These last 5 or 6 days have been really hard because the events that are occurring are they are a prelude, literally, to World War III, and they're guys pushing the buttons are no friends of ours at all, or no friends of the world.
Of humanity,
And
no friends of humanity.
it's terrible. And we're learning that these backroom deals that have been made and agreed to are the cause of these activities. For example, Erdogan was questioned he's in a conference. He may still be there right now in Malaysia.
Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, and he was asked, well, do you think the United States is going to let you get away with this takeover of Libya? And he said, Trump and I had a long conversation, and he agreed with me that I was going to be able to expand the Ottoman Empire, and in return, I would move my troops in to help him continue his control or takeover of the northern 2/3 of Syria.
Boy.
And that was a private agreement that is absolutely devastating. That's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
And so that puts Libya in jeopardy. At the Eastern Mediterranean, that agreement with the criminal government out of Tripoli, all those things, are getting the imprimatur from Trump, and that's just unacceptable.
Well, we're going to talk about Erdogan and Libya today, and what the North African countries are going to do, what the Arab League is going to do to counter Turkey's threat, because it threatens all of them. We're going to talk about Soleimani and his assassination by Trump. We're going to talk about Iraq and Iran. We're going to talk about a number of things today on our show. And
I also want everybody to remember 3 weeks ago, we told everybody the direct information we got from Iraq is the Iraqis had demanded the United States remove their troops from Iraq. They were disgusted with the abuse that they were suffering at the hands of the United States. And we said that 3 weeks ago. And so when the people in Iraq voiced their opinions by going in with rocks and plastic pipes to attack that huge U.S. embassy, that's a 100-acre size building. It's the largest embassy that the United States has built any place, at billions and billions of dollars. The people wanted to throw the U.S. out because they're tired of the abuse. We told everybody that 3 weeks ago. So then all of a sudden it looks like it's some big surprise that the Iraqi people have gone to the streets to voice their disgust with the U.S. But remember, that was 3 weeks ago. So now then for the United States to say, oh my gosh, our embassy was attacked by the people of Iraq. This was not Iranians. These were Iraqi citizens.
Well, they were attacking because of the U.S. had bombed a number of Iraqi military places. It killed a whole bunch of Iraqi soldiers and civilians. The U.S. had bombed them. And so they were coming out, they're saying, think about Iraq. There's a lie made up that they're weapons of mass destruction in 2003. And so this huge army comes and blows up the entire country, kills their leaders, kills everybody, and destroys the country.
Takes over all the oil production, takes over control of the country. They have been barefoot hungry ever since.
Demonetize their money to be worth nothing, gives them no ability to rebuild their country, and has 20,000 troops of occupation inside their country. And then when the Iraqi people ask the occupiers and destroyers of their country to please leave now, but all of a sudden we're the occupiers are the victims.
Yeah. And the reason they told them to leave is because there has been no reconstruction of the infrastructure that was blown up by the United States. Their power plants are not operating. Their water treatment plants are not operating. Their sewer systems are not operating. All this infrastructure that should have been rebuilt Instead, the Iraqi money is being used to build this huge embassy to support this army of 20,000, and all their oil and everything is being sucked out of the country.
Their money's not worth anything.
The contracts that are being put in place in Iraq are only for U.S. approved companies, which are deep staters. The Iraqis have said that the price they're paying is 2 or 3 times what it should have cost, and at that, the construction is terrible. And they have no say. Plus, the contractors in Iraq, since the money's demonetized, they're being paid with Iraqi oil. So the people have currency that's worth nothing, and they're not able to use it even to pay these contractors that are forced upon them. So, do they have a right to be upset about that? Sure they do. But to try to blame Iran for this problem in Iraq is an absolute lie. And why anybody in their right mind would believe the lamestream media about this when we know everything else is lying? Why would we believe the lies about this?
There's a flip. Why would we know the lamestream makes up all kinds of stuff and lies about it? All of a sudden, they think this is a great deal. Why would we? Why would we all of a sudden think they're telling the truth?
Yeah, that was cause for concern for me. I mean, I wanted to speak to you guys, and I mean, again, there's a real tendency, I think, for people in the independent media to try to be out ahead of the mainstream or to break a story. I'm less interested in breaking stories than I am in taking a day to absorb all the information and try to analyze it to get a better, or more than a day, however long it takes, to get a more clear analysis, like the types of things that you're sharing with us right now. And we're going to go in depth on that when we begin our sponsor exclusive show on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Jimmy and JoAnne, I think in 2020 we've got to get you guys onto Subscribestar, because the social engineers have only become more aggressive. They're now, I think, I'm seeing signs that they're attacking Patreon, or at least Crowdsource the Truth's ability to operate on Patreon, and that makes sense. They're going for the strongest aspect and the thing that keeps myself and my co-hosts sustained. And this is the same type of tactic that social engineers use, whether it's a YouTube channel that they want to eliminate, a government that they want to eliminate, or a president that they want to eliminate. They're planting the seeds in everybody's mind so that people will accept what's coming next, which very well could be a war with Iran. Isn't that right?
Sure. Jason, have you seen this site called CrowdStrike?
Yes.
It looks like your artwork on the front of it.
Really? CrowdStrike? Well, CrowdStrike is the FBI cutout that was started by Sean Henry and Dmitry Alperovich. You talking about this one?
No, their artwork on the front is the same icon that you got with the golden boy, with the head tilted back.
Crowdsource?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen that. There are, as I said, many social engineers who attempt to imitate Crowdsource the Truth and have gone to all kinds of lengths. They're sending letters all the time, threatening lawsuits. Granted, there's no basis for these lawsuits, but threatening.
You're making a difference, Jason.
Exactly.
But Jason, it's a pretty sad state of affairs when JoAnne and I have actual intel about Iraq weeks before anybody else does,
or before it's known by anybody else. Somebody's got it.
This is just not. This is such a damning truth about the lamestream media. Because JoAnne and I, this is us. We have you and us. This is us. This is it. And people from all over the world call into us. They send us communiques about what's taking place in their country because they say we're the only opportunity for the truth to get out.
Yeah, and so people really need to wonder who is trying to stop that from getting out, and why are they using these lies to do it. Now, let me ask you something about this embassy in Iraq. I've been hearing that, as you said, it's the largest U.S. embassy. It's the largest embassy anywhere in the world, constructed at the tune of, billions perhaps. And we know who's building these types of things. It's contractors like Halliburton and things of that nature. we're looking at it right here, and again, this is one of the areas of the world where 3D imagery and street view imagery is not available on Google. I mean, that's kind of understandable. We can see even from these satellite photos that there's a wall surrounding this complex. Now, this U-shaped structure looks like it would be the embassy itself. The rest of this looks like, an industrial park or something. This is a pretty sizable buildings that could house offices, housing, whatever. This is essentially,
military.
like a military compound within the city of Baghdad. Who knows what they're doing? I'm not sure if we spoke about this when I was in Sarajevo with Charles, but it was basically well known by the locals there that the U.S. Embassy was a CIA outpost, and they were very strict about not taking pictures of it and things like that. So again, as you guys are saying, when the mainstream news, when CNN applauds something that Donald Trump is doing, that immediately causes my brain to, be
no kidding.
in warning mode.
The only country that gave Trump a kudos for killing Soleimani was Israel. The only country in the world.
I think that the biggest benefit that Trump got out of this was all these people are trying to claim that he had a working relationship with Russia. That's been proven to be 100% wrong, because he not only poked the bear in the eye, he kicked it in the ass, he did everything he could to try to start a war with Russia.
Why would he do
I think
that?
that's the only positive thing.
That's because Iran is one of Russia's an ally with Russia and China.
Yeah, I mean, this aspect of what Donald Trump is doing, I do not agree with and does not make sense. I don't necessarily.
Dangerous.
Sorry, JoAnne?
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Very dangerous.
We don't need World War III. We do not need any more wars.
No.
And for him to now ramp up with 3,000 more troops into Iraq, after Iraq has asked him to leave,
Totally.
this is in the face of the Iraqis that we are your occupiers and we'll do what we want.
Yeah, it is.
I guess
bad.
Trump's going to go in there with shovels and try to find those weapons of mass destruction.
Well, I mean, it's obviously you're being sarcastic, Jimmy, but it's a relevant comment because, this is a war that was started on a lie, perpetuated on a lie. The United States has been in there for 17 years, creating an economic and environmental disaster that has never been seen, the likes of this. The amount of depleted uranium that's been dropped all over the place. I was reading some article that spoke about the generations of destruction that the U.S. has brought to Iraq. Certainly not welcome. This compound that we're looking at here has got to be, one of the largest things in the city, and it's like a tumor to them. This is not an Iraq.
It's 104 acres. It's
It's
104 acres.
It's taking up like an entire
It's the
city
size
block.
of the Vatican.
Yeah.
The nasty thing about the depleted uranium is the half-life on that is 50,000 years. So they have permanently depleted. They permanently ruined so much land, and all the kids and dogs in those neighborhoods are glowing in the dark. The amount of babies that are stillborn and deformed from the depleted uranium. Those casualties are never accounted for. But that's sins that the people of the United States are going to have to bear because we've allowed this to go on. Yeah. And the United States does not make any weapons that are not that don't use depleted uranium.
And it's against international law.
Yeah.
I mean, but they.
So who's the lawless country? And something else you mentioned, the CIA involvement. The before this embassy, the largest U.S. embassy was in Tunisia. And that embassy was where all CIA agents were sent to be field trained, to be seated in the counselor section of every embassy in the world. So every embassy in the world, every U.S. embassy has a counselor section that is a CIA outpost.
Yeah.
Terrible.
So the State Department is really CIA.
Yeah. No, I think that's been pretty well understood by many people for some time. And I mean, here's these embassies. You look at the embassies for other countries, at least in New York, and they look like, they just sort of showed up in New York City and said, let's buy this, $5 million townhouse. And it just fits into the rest of the neighborhood. It would be just a private home if you didn't see the flag of whatever country. I've walked by some embassies that have some shady looking characters standing outside of them, but then again, they've got to be very concerned. If you're talking about the embassy of Iran or whatever, they've got to be concerned about who in the United States might do something to it. But these are very clearly, U.S. compounds inserted into these cities, probably for the most part. I mean, certainly in Sarajevo, it stood out from the rest of the stuff that was there as something very different and something that wasn't helping the people around. So it's a complicated problem. We're going to be getting in depth in just about 15 minutes when we begin our sponsor exclusive show on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If this is the first time you're seeing Jimmy and JoAnne, now is a great time to get onto Patreon or Subscribestar and check out Unseen Libya. People who have seen the show before will remember that Jimmy and JoAnne are the only known people to have escaped what would be certain death, capture by Al-Qaeda. People who sponsor Jimmy and JoAnne on Patreon are going to get free shipping when they order the Escape from Al-Qaeda DVD. This is a digital disc that contains photographs and videos that Jimmy and JoAnne took with their own camera. They did not go to Libya as journalists. They went there as business people, but were unwittingly drawn into what is proving to be perhaps the most important battle, important invasion. Not that it was a good thing, but this is playing into so many aspects of what's happening now here in the new decade of 2020. So we'll be digging into that in just a few minutes when we begin. Jimmy and JoAnne, I'm looking forward to the conversation, and thank you both so much for all this information that you're bringing us.
There's going to be a huge amount of documentation for everybody to read. It's a lot of information that we've been able to compile in the last few days, and it's very important. Some of the articles, everybody needs to read them a couple of times because they are detailed. They really pin the tail on the donkey, if you would.
Mm-hmm. And not in the way that CNN and MSNBC and Fox do. They allow people to really read about details that perhaps aren't being shared widely and draw their own conclusions. So we'll see everybody in just a few minutes on Patreon and Subscribestar. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, Jason.